The morning sun cast long shadows across the Earth Defense Command Center when the alarms began to sound. Admiral Jake Morrison set down his coffee cup and walked calmly to the main display screen. After 40 years of waiting, this moment had finally arrived. "Report," Morrison said to the young officer at the sensor station. "Sir, we have massive contacts at the edge of our solar system. They just appeared out of nowhere. The computer is still counting, but we estimate over 50,000 ships." Morrison nodded slowly. He had been expecting this day since he was a young lieutenant. Back then, Earth had made first contact with a small scout ship that crashed in the Pacific Ocean. The dying alien pilot had warned them about the Zephyrian Empire before taking his last breath. That was in 2047, and humanity had spent every day since then preparing for this moment. "Get me Dr. Lisa Grant," Morrison ordered, "and patch me through to Captain Ryan Blake and Commander Amy Torres." Within minutes, the three most important people in Earth's defense appeared on the communication screen. Dr. Grant sat in her laboratory, surrounded by alien technology that humanity had spent decades studying and improving. Captain Blake stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Earth vessel Liberty, hidden in the shadow of Mars. Commander Torres was deep underground in the Rocky Mountains, surrounded by banks of computers that controlled Earth's ground defenses. "They're here," Morrison said simply. "How many?" asked Blake, his hand already moving to alert his fleet. 50,000 ships, maybe more. Standard Zephyrian battle formation." Dr. Grant leaned forward. "Admiral, are you sure they're Zephyrians? The energy signatures match what we expected?" "Perfect match, Doctor. Every reading confirms what our guest told us 40 years ago." The guest was what they called the dying alien pilot. His name had been Veltar, and he had been running from the Zephyrian Empire when his ship was damaged. Before he died, he had told them everything about his people's conquerors. The Zephyrians were an empire that had conquered 847 worlds. They used the same tactics every time. They would arrive with overwhelming force, demand surrender, and destroy anyone who resisted. Veltar had also given them something precious: detailed information about Zephyrian technology, their military tactics, and most importantly, their weaknesses. "Incoming transmission," announced the communications officer. "Put it on the main screen," Morrison ordered. The screen filled with the image of a creature that looked like a cross between a lizard and an insect. Its four eyes glowed red, and its mouth was full of sharp teeth. When it spoke, the translation computer turned its words into English. "Primitive inhabitants of the third planet, I am Overlord Kethfer of the Zephyrian Empire. Your world has been selected for conquest and integration into our glorious empire. You have one of your hours to surrender completely, or we will take your planet by force and destroy most of your population as an example to others." The alien leaned closer to the camera. "Do not think to resist. We have conquered 847 worlds. Your primitive species cannot stand against our might. We have studied your pathetic defenses. A few hundred ships and some orbital platforms will not save you." The transmission ended, leaving the command center in silence. Morrison turned to his officers. "Well, that was rude. They didn't even say please." A few people chuckled, but the tension in the room was thick. Everyone knew that this moment would decide the fate of humanity. "Admiral," said Dr. Grant, "their ships match everything Veltar told us. Same design, same energy weapons, same shield technology. They haven't changed their tactics in decades." "That's what we were counting on," Morrison replied. "Blake, what's the status of the fleet?" "All ships are in position and ready, sir." "They can't see us yet. Torres ground defenses?" "Every system is online and waiting for your command, Admiral." Morrison walked to his command chair and sat down. He had practiced this moment in his mind thousands of times. Everything humanity had built, every innovation they had made, every strategy they had developed, all led to this single moment. "Open a channel to the Zephyrian fleet," he ordered. When the channel was open, Morrison looked directly into the camera. His voice was calm and professional, the voice of a man who had spent his entire life preparing for this conversation. "Overlord Kethver, this is Admiral Jake Morrison of the Earth Defense Forces. We have received your message and have prepared our response." Morrison paused for a moment, letting his words sink in. "You have 30 minutes to leave our solar system immediately. Any ship that remains after that time will be destroyed. This is your only warning." He signaled for the transmission to end. The command center erupted in nervous laughter and conversation. The communications officer turned to Morrison with wide eyes. "Sir," they're responding. "The Overlord wants to speak to you again. Put him through." Kethver appeared on screen again, but this time he was laughing. The sound was like metal scraping against stone. "Foolish human, do you think your few ships can stand against 50,000 of ours? We have weapons that can crack planets in half. We have conquered species far more advanced than your primitive race." Morrison smiled. It was not a friendly smile. "Overlord, you have 29 minutes and 30 seconds remaining." He cut the transmission and turned to his team. "Gentlemen and ladies, 40 years ago, a dying alien gave us the greatest gift in human history. Time to prepare. Let's show these invaders what humanity can do when we have time to get ready." The countdown began. Overlord Kethver stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Destroyer of Worlds, and watched the countdown timer on his display. 28 minutes remained until the human deadline. Around him, his officers prepared for what they expected to be the shortest conquest in Zephyrian history. "Commander Zaxxeth, what do our sensors show about human defenses?" Kethver asked. The younger Zephyrian studied his instruments. "Overlord, we detect approximately 300 ships scattered throughout their system. Most appear to be civilian vessels. We also see several orbital platforms around their main planet. Their technology appears primitive by our standards." Kethver clicked his mandibles together in amusement. 300 ships against 50,000. These humans must be insane. On Earth, General P. Collins stood in the strategic command bunker, buried 2 miles beneath the Colorado Mountains. Banks of computers surrounded him, each one monitoring a different aspect of humanity's defense network. Dr. Nick Watson sat at a nearby console, his fingers dancing across quantum physics equations that would have been impossible to solve just 20 years ago. "General, the alien fleet is moving into attack formation," reported Commander Sarah Bell from her Stealth Operations Center. "They're following the exact pattern that Veltar described." Collins nodded. "Just like we expected. They've used the same tactics for hundreds of years. Why change something that always works?" Dr. Watson looked up from his calculations. "General, the quantum field generators are at full power. Every ship in our hidden fleet is completely invisible to their sensors. They still think they're only facing our decoy ships." The decoy ships were humanity's first trick. 300 older vessels equipped with basic weapons and shields, deliberately made visible to alien sensors. The Zephyrians would see exactly what they expected to see: a primitive defense force that stood no chance against their overwhelming numbers. What they could not see were the 2,000 advanced warships hidden throughout the solar system, cloaked by technology that bent space and time itself. Each hidden ship was more powerful than anything the Zephyrians had ever faced. Commander Bell monitored her stealth ships from her command center on the far side of the moon. Her vessels were the smallest in the human fleet, but they carried the most advanced technology. Using miniature black holes contained in magnetic fields, they could appear and disappear at will, striking targets and vanishing before the enemy could respond. Stealth Squadron Alpha is in position near the alien vanguard, Bell reported. They still can't see us. The Zephyrian fleet moved deeper into the solar system, confident in their superiority. They had conquered nearly 1,000 worlds using these same tactics. Send in the main fleet, destroy the obvious defenses, demand surrender, and add another planet to the Empire. Overlord Kethfer reviewed the intelligence reports one more time. Earth was listed as a single-planet species with limited technology. They had never expanded beyond their own solar system. They had no allies and no advanced weapons. It should be a simple conquest. Sir, 15 minutes until their deadline, Commander Zackstage reported. Begin the attack, Kethfer ordered. Target their orbital platforms first, then their pathetic fleet. Leave their planet intact. We'll need the survivors as slaves. The first wave of Zephyrian ships opened fire on Earth's orbital defenses. Energy beams that could melt through solid rock struck the human platforms. The aliens expected to see explosions and debris. Instead, their weapons simply bounced off invisible shields. What happened? Kethfer demanded. Why didn't all weapons work? Sir, they appeared to have some kind of energy shielding we've never seen before, Zax replied, his voice showing the first hint of concern. On Earth, Admiral Morrison watched the alien attack with satisfaction. Dr. Grant, how are the shields holding? Perfect, Admiral. Their weapons can't even scratch our barriers. 40 years of studying their technology has paid off. The shield technology was one of humanity's greatest achievements. By studying the wreckage of Veltar's ship, human scientists had learned how Zephyrian weapons worked. Then they had spent decades developing defenses that could stop those weapons completely. Admiral, they're targeting our decoy fleet now, Captain Blake reported from his hidden position. The Zephyrian weapons struck the 300 visible human ships. Some of the older vessels took damage, but their shields held. The aliens expected to see the human fleet destroyed in seconds. Instead, the ships kept fighting. This is impossible, Kethfer hissed. Their shields are too strong. How can such a primitive species have better defenses than our weapons? Then the first real surprise came. Commander Bell's stealth ships materialized directly behind a group of Zephyrian vessels. Before the aliens could react, the human ships fired. The weapons didn't look like much, just brief flashes of light. But when they hit, entire alien ships simply vanished. What was that? Kethfer roared. Where did those ships come from? Unknown vessels appeared from nowhere and destroyed 12 of our ships. Then disappeared again, Zackstage reported, his voice now showing real fear. Dr. Watson smiled as he watched the engagement from his underground laboratory. General, the quantum disruptors are working perfectly. Those alien ships didn't just explode. They were converted into pure energy. The quantum disruptors were humanity's secret weapon. Instead of trying to blow up enemy ships, they changed the fundamental structure of matter itself. Any ship hit by a quantum disruptor simply stopped existing. More stealth ships appeared throughout the Zephyrian fleet. Each time they fired, alien vessels vanished without a trace. The aliens couldn't track them, couldn't target them, and couldn't understand how they worked. Sir, we've lost over 100 ships in the last 5 minutes, Zackstage reported. Our sensors can't detect the enemy vessels until they fire, and by then it's too late. Kethfer stared at the tactical display in growing horror. Red dots representing destroyed ships were disappearing faster than his computers could count them. This wasn't how conquests were supposed to work. All ships, fall back to defensive formation, he ordered. We need to understand what we're facing, but it was already too late. The humans had shown their first cards, and the Zephyrian Empire was about to learn that some species don't just fight back, they fight to win. The Zephyrian fleet pulled back toward the edge of Earth's solar system, trying to escape the invisible attackers that had destroyed nearly 200 of their ships. Overlord Kethver stood frozen on his bridge, watching his tactical display with growing terror. In 40 years of conquest, he had never seen anything like this. "Commander Zaxeth, get me a full scan of this system. I want to know what we're really facing," Kethver ordered. "Sir, our long-range sensors are detecting something strange about the asteroid belt between the 4th and 5th planets. The readings don't make sense." On Earth, Colonel Matt Brooks sat in the Special Weapons Division Command Center, his hand hovering over a large red button. Around him, screens showed the positions of every alien ship in the solar system. He had been waiting for this moment for 15 years. "Admiral Morrison, the enemy fleet is moving into the trap zone," Brooks reported through his communication. "Link, are all platforms ready?" Morrison asked. "Every single one, sir." 100,000 automated defense platforms, all hidden inside asteroids. The aliens have no idea what they're flying into. The asteroid belt had been humanity's greatest construction project. For 30 years, teams of engineers had worked in secret, hollowing out asteroids and filling them with the most advanced weapons humanity could build. From the outside, they looked like ordinary space rocks. Inside, each one contained enough firepower to destroy a small fleet. Engineer Kate Miller watched from her control station on Ceres, the largest asteroid in the belt. Their team had spent 10 years converting the dwarf planet into a fortress that could coordinate the entire defense network. "Kate, what's the status of the Solomon Array?" Morrison asked. "All quantum entanglement links are stable, Admiral. We can target every enemy ship simultaneously the moment you give the order." The Solomon Array was Dr. Watson's masterpiece. Using quantum physics that most people couldn't understand, the system could strike thousands of targets at the exact same moment, no matter how far apart they were. It was like having a gun that could shoot in 1,000 different directions at once. Captain Joe Parker piloted his reconnaissance ship through the outer system, staying invisible and gathering information about the alien fleet. His ship was so small that it barely showed up on sensors, but it carried the most advanced scanning equipment humanity had ever built. "Admiral, I'm reading their fleet composition," Parker reported. "They have battleships, cruisers, destroyers, and support vessels. Standard Zephyrian formation, just like Veltar described. But sir, there's something else." "What is it, Captain?" "They're scared. I can detect panic in their communications. They're not used to losing ships, and they don't understand how we're doing it." Overlord Kethver was indeed scared. He had conquered nearly 1,000 worlds, but he had never faced an enemy like this. His ships were disappearing without warning. His weapons couldn't penetrate human shields, and now his sensors were picking up strange readings from throughout the solar system. "Sir, our science officer reports that there are massive energy sources hidden throughout this system," Zaxth reported. "Far more than we initially detected." "How many energy sources?" "Over 100,000, sir. They're all powered up and ready to fire." Kethver felt his blood turn cold. 100,000 hidden weapons. How was that possible? Earth was supposed to be a primitive single-planet species. The Zephyrian fleet continued moving deeper into the solar system, not knowing they were flying directly into humanity's carefully prepared trap. Every step they took brought them closer to the asteroid belt, where Colonel Brooks waited with his finger on the activation button. "Admiral, enemy ships are now entering the engagement zone," Brooks reported. "Light them up, Colonel." Brooks pressed the button. Across the asteroid belt, 100,000 hidden weapons platforms activated simultaneously. What the aliens had thought was an empty field of space rocks suddenly became a sphere of destruction that surrounded there. entire fleet. The first volley was devastating. Beams of pure energy lanced out from asteroids in every direction, striking Zephyrian ships faster than their crews could react. In the first 10 seconds, 3,000 alien vessels exploded in brilliant flashes of light. But that was only the beginning. Kate Miller's voice came through the communication system, calm and professional. Solomon Array is locked on target. All platforms reporting ready. Fire, Morrison ordered. The quantum entanglement weapons activated across the entire asteroid belt. Energy traveled instantly through folded space, striking targets throughout the alien fleet at the exact same moment. It looked like the entire Zephyrian armada had been hit by lightning from every direction at once. Overlord Kethfer watched in horror as his tactical display showed red dots disappearing by the thousands. Ships that had taken decades to build were being destroyed faster than his computers could count them. "Damage report," he screamed. "Sir, we've lost over 15,000 ships in the last minute. Our fleet is being destroyed faster than we can retreat." "How is this possible? They're just humans." The answer came from Captain Parker, whose small ship darted through the chaos, recording everything for Earth's military records. "Admiral, you should see this. The aliens thought they were fighting a primitive species. They had no idea we've been preparing for 40 years. Their intelligence was completely wrong." Dr. Watson monitored the battle from his underground laboratory, watching as 40 years of preparation paid off. "General Collins, the aliens are trapped. They can't advance because of our defenses, and they can't retreat because we've surrounded the entire system with weapons platforms." "How many of their ships are left?" Collins asked. "Approximately 30,000, sir. But that number is dropping fast." The Zephyrian Empire's greatest fleet, the force that had conquered nearly 1,000 worlds, was being systematically destroyed by a species they had dismissed as primitive. In less than 30 minutes, humanity had proven that preparation and intelligence could defeat overwhelming numbers. Kethfer stared at his display as another 5,000 ships disappeared. For the first time in his life, he understood what it felt like to be the one being conquered. Overlord Kethfer watched his fleet die around him. In less than an hour, the mighty Zephyrian armada had been reduced from 50,000 ships to barely 20,000. The humans had turned his invasion into a massacre, and now he faced a via choice no Zephyrian commander had ever needed to make: retreat or die. "All ships, fall back to the system edge," he ordered. "We're leaving this cursed place." But as the surviving alien vessels tried to escape, they discovered something that filled them with even greater terror. The edges of the solar system were blocked by an invisible wall of energy that their ships could not pass through. "Sir, we can't leave," Commander Zaxtate reported, his voice shaking. "There's some kind of barrier surrounding the entire system. Our ships bounce off it like it's solid metal." Admiral Susan Hayes sat in her command chair aboard the battleship Freedom, watching the alien fleet struggle against the quantum barrier. Her ship was one of 50 massive vessels that had been hidden in the space between Jupiter and Saturn for the past 5 years, waiting for this moment. "Admiral Morrison, the enemy is trapped inside our barrier," Hayes reported. "They can't escape, and they can't advance. They're sitting ducks." Morrison's voice came through the communication system, calm and confident. "Admiral Hayes, you may begin the demonstration." Hayes smiled. She had been waiting for this order her entire career. "All ships decloak and prepare to engage. Let's show these aliens what real warships look like." Across the outer solar system, the Newton-class battleships dropped their invisibility shields and revealed themselves to the Zephyrian fleet. Each ship was 3 times larger than the biggest alien vessel, bristling with weapons that could crack moons in half. Dr. Alex Stone watched from his laboratory on Europa, Jupiter's ice-covered moon. His quantum weapons research had produced the most destructive force in human history. The weapons didn't just destroy ships. They could eliminate entire fleets in a single coordinated strike. Dr. Stone, are the quantum cannons ready? Morrison asked. All systems are charged and ready, Admiral. We can target every remaining alien ship simultaneously. The quantum cannons were humanity's ultimate weapon. They use the same principles as the quantum disruptors, but on a massive scale. Instead of converting single ships into energy, they could eliminate thousands of targets at once by manipulating the fundamental forces of reality itself. Commander Dan Foster coordinated the attack from the Tactical Operations Center buried beneath the Pacific Ocean. His job was to make sure every alien ship was targeted and that none escaped to carry word back to their empire. Admiral, we have targeting locks on all 19,847 remaining enemy vessels, Foster reported. Kethver stood on his bridge, staring at the human battleships that had appeared around his fleet like hunting wolves. Each one was a monument to military engineering that made his own ships look like toys. How many of them are there? He asked. 50 major warships, sir. But each one appears to be more powerful than our entire remaining fleet. The Overlord felt something he had never experienced before. Complete helplessness. His empire had built its power on overwhelming force and superior numbers. But the humans had turned that strategy against him, hiding their true strength until it was too late to escape. Sir, incoming transmission from the human fleet, his communications officer reported. Put it through. The main screen filled with the image of Admiral Hayes, a middle-aged human woman with gray hair and cold blue eyes. When she spoke, her voice carried the authority of someone who had never lost a battle. Overlord Kethver, I am Admiral Susan Hayes of the Earth Defense Forces. Your fleet is completely surrounded and outnumbered. You have two choices. Surrender immediately or be destroyed. Kethver tried to maintain his dignity. You cannot defeat the entire Zephyrian Empire. We have conquered nearly 1,000 worlds. Our armies will come for you. Hayes smiled, but it was not a pleasant expression. Overlord, you still don't understand what you're facing. We've known about your empire for 40 years. We know the location of every one of your worlds. We know your trade routes, your military bases, and your weaknesses. She leaned forward, her eyes never leaving his. We could destroy your entire empire in a matter of weeks if we chose to. But we're not like you. We don't conquer for the pleasure of it. Dr. Stone's voice came through the communication system, speaking directly to the alien commander. Overlord, let me demonstrate what happens to species that threaten Earth. The quantum cannons fired. 10,000 alien ships vanished in an instant, converted into pure energy by weapons that operated beyond the aliens' understanding of physics. The remaining Zephyrian vessels sat motionless in space, their crews too shocked to move. That was 10,000 ships destroyed in 1 second, Hayes said calmly. We can do that to your entire remaining fleet or to any world in your empire. The choice is yours. Kethver looked at his tactical display. Half his remaining fleet had simply ceased to exist. No explosions, no debris, no trace that they had ever been there. The humans had weapons that could erase matter from reality itself. What do you want? He asked, his voice barely above a whisper. We want you to carry a message back to your empire. Morrison's voice came through the speakers. Tell them that Earth is not a target for conquest. Tell them that humanity offers protection to any species that wants freedom from your rule. Commander Foster added, We've been in contact with the worlds you've conquered. Many of them are ready to rebel against your empire. They're just waiting for someone strong enough to protect them. The truth hit Kethver like a physical blow. The humans hadn't just been preparing to defend themselves. They had been planning to destroy his entire empire and liberate every world the Zephyrians had conquered. You're not defenders, he said, understanding flooding through him. You're conquerors, just like us. Hayes shook her head. No, Overlord, we're liberators. There's a difference. We don't want to rule your worlds. We want to free them. The demonstration was over. The Zephyrian Empire's greatest fleet had been reduced to fewer than 10,000 ships. Trapped in a solar system they could not escape, facing an enemy they could not defeat. And the humans weren't even using their full power yet. The remaining Zephyrian ships floated in space like wounded animals, their crews staring at displays that showed the impossible. In less than 2 hours, the greatest invasion fleet in their empire's history had been reduced to fewer than 8,000 vessels. They were trapped, outgunned, and facing an enemy that seemed to control the very laws of physics. President Helen Carter stood in the Oval Office, looking out at the peaceful Earth sky. Above her, in space, the most important conversation in galactic history was about to take place. She had spent her entire political career preparing for this moment, when humanity would step onto the galactic stage not as victims, but as liberators. Admiral Morrison, patch me through to the alien commander, she said. Overlord Kethfer appeared on the communication screen in his damaged command center. His 4 eyes showed exhaustion and defeat. Behind him, smoke drifted from broken control. Panels and several of his crew members lay wounded on the floor. Overlord Kethfer, I'm President Helen Carter, the elected leader of Earth. I'm speaking to you now because what happens next will change the galaxy forever. Kethfer straightened as much as his injuries allowed. You've already demonstrated your power, human. What more do you want? I want you to understand something that your empire never learned, Carter said, her voice calm but firm. True strength doesn't come from conquest. It comes from protection. It comes from giving others the choice to be free. General Chris Murphy stepped into view beside the president. His uniform showed the medals of 40 years of military service, all spent, preparing for this day. Overlord, we know everything about your empire, Murphy said. We know about the slave worlds that mine resources for your military. We know about the species you've wiped out because they resisted too long. We know about the children taken from their families to serve in your armies. Kethfer's mandibles clicked nervously. How could you possibly know such things? You've never left your solar system. Ambassador Tony Richards appeared on the screen, smiling. That's where you're wrong, Overlord. We've been in contact with your conquered worlds for 20 years. They've been sending us information, waiting for someone strong enough to help them. The truth hit Kethfer like a physical blow. The humans had been planning this for decades. They hadn't just been preparing to defend Earth. They had been building a network of resistance across his entire empire. The Altarian rebellion 3 years ago, Kethfer said slowly. The weapons they used, the tactics they employed. That was you, Richards nodded. We provided support to any world brave enough to fight for its freedom. But we waited until we were strong enough to protect them from your retaliation. President Carter leaned forward. Overlord, I'm going to make you an offer that no conqueror in galactic history has ever received. We're going to let most of your fleet go home. Most of my fleet? Your personal ship and your command staff will remain here as our guests. The rest of your ships will return to your empire with a message. Any world that wants independence will receive Earth's protection. Any world that chooses to remain part of your empire will be left alone, as long as they don't threaten others. General Murphy pulled up a holographic display that showed the entire Zephyrian Empire. Red dots marked nearly 200 worlds, connected by lines showing trade routes and military supply chains. We've spent 20 years mapping your empire, Murphy explained. We know which worlds are military bases, which ones are slave colonies, and which ones are held by force. We also know which ones might choose to stay with you if given a real choice. Kethfer stared at the display. It was more detailed than his own military strategic maps. The humans knew his empire better than he did. "You're going to destroy everything we've built," he said. "No," Carter replied. "We're going to give everyone the choice you never offered them. Some worlds might choose to stay in your empire if you treat them fairly. Others will choose independence. The difference is that it will be their choice." Ambassador Richards activated another display, this one showing Earth's hidden military strength. Thousands of ships, weapons platforms, and bases scattered across dozens of star systems. "This is what you really came to fight," Richards said. "We've been building our own empire for 20 years. Not an empire of conquest, but an empire of protection. Every species that asked for our help received it." The display showed green dots representing 43 star systems where Earth had established defense networks and military bases. The humans hadn't just been hiding in their solar system. They had been expanding across local space, building an alliance of free worlds. The Kepler colonies, the Wolf system defenses, the Centauri trade routes, Cathver whispered. "Those were all yours. Every species that wanted freedom received our protection," Murphy confirmed. "We just waited until we were strong enough to face your main fleet before revealing ourselves." President Carter stood up, her decision made. "Overlord, your ship will remain here. You'll be treated with respect, but you won't be leaving. The rest of your fleet will carry our message back to your empire. Any world that wants independence will receive it. Any world that threatens others will face Earth's military. And if my empire chooses to fight?" General Murphy smiled grimly. "Overlord, you arrived with 50,000 ships and lost 42,000 of them in 2 hours. We use less than 10% of our actual military strength. If your empire chooses war, it will be the shortest war in galactic history." The communication ended, leaving Cathver alone with the ruins of his fleet and the knowledge that everything he had believed about galactic power had been wrong. 3 days later, 7,000 Zephyrian ships limped back toward their empire, carrying news that would reshape galactic politics forever. Behind them, Earth's fleet began its own expansion, not to conquer new worlds, but to free the ones that had been waiting 40 years for liberation. The galaxy's greatest predator had revealed itself, and it hunted not for territory, but for justice. Within a year, the Zephyrian Empire had lost half its territory to rebellions supported by Earth's military. Within 5 years, it had transformed from a conquering force into a peaceful federation of worlds that chose to work together. And at the center of it all, Earth stood as the guardian that had turned the oldest law of the galaxy upside down. The strong no longer preyed on the weak. Instead, they protected them.